Baruch Levi B here from Soul Centered. Welcome. Very excited. We have a new podcast out and a new episode for you. My wife, Ariella, co-founder of Soul Centered, and I created this podcast series so that we could help to continue your journey from the morning to the afternoon of life. And we have many ways we do that, but the podcast is now our most recent edition, and we're very excited to be offering it to you. So you can check it out. I'll put a link in the notes below. Soul Centered is a center for anybody seeking to proactively and purposefully navigate the transition from the morning of life to the afternoon of life, or to journey through anywhere through the afternoon of life. The afternoon of life, at least defined by Carl Jung, really begins around 40. 40 and onwards, it's not a hard stop. We do work with people in their 30s, but by and large, in our 30s, certainly prior to that, it's a different set of goals and rules and tools. Morning of life, goals and rules and tools. And what Ariella and I do is counsel clients to navigate the afternoon of life with new goals, new rules, and new tools. In the morning of life, oftentimes we're asleep. Even if we're active as a self, our soul, in many ways, is off to the sidelines. Our authentic self, call it whatever you want, your true self. I'm reading a lot by Richard Rohr, Father Richard Rohr, who talks about the true and the false self. So it doesn't matter what you call it, but you know it when you're in it. And the morning of life, in many ways, at least in retrospect, feels or felt like some level we were asleep behind the wheel, going after things that we never really chose for ourselves, living professions, pursuits, relationships that we're not sure how we ended up in. And so the afternoon of life is about consciously choosing these things or letting these things go. So in this podcast, we call it Remembering Yourself and Recommitting to Your Soul. We talk about the forgetting that happens in the morning of life, but we talk about the remembering that can occur in the afternoon of life. It's not a given. It doesn't just happen. But the universe does conspire to wake us up, right? The divine, the universe, God, call it whatever you want. There's a whispering that happens, usually in our 30s and 40s. It's gentle at first, until it's not. Next podcast episode, we're going to talk about the shatterings. It's very much like it sounds. It's not a whispering. When we don't listen, eventually we have opportunities to be shattered, whether we want them or not. That's life, and especially the afternoon of life. How many shatterings come along? Do we see them, however, only as endings, or do we see them as beginnings, as opportunities to grow, to change, to transform? And so that's really what the afternoon of life is about. If we're willing to have the courage to consciously face it and move through it and learn the new rules. One of the new rules that we'll touch upon in this podcast, I'm not going to give you the whole podcast. This is a very short snippet of what you'll be listening to, but is about remembering and not, the morning of life is about doing. The Dalai Lama, we're not human doings, we're human beings. But the morning of life is about doing. So when I work with clients, oftentimes it's about, okay, let's do spirituality, let's do meaning, let's do purpose. And there's an element of action and activity that has to happen if you want to find meaning and uncover your true, authentic purpose. But the rules of the afternoon of life are far less about doing and far more about being present. Being still, learning how to listen, not to go out into the world and find our answers, but to go inwards and simply learn how to sit and be present and let the answers and our path unfold. And so that's really a profound piece and a shift of the rules in the afternoon of life. And as we do that, we start to remember. When I work with clients, it's so not about becoming something else. It's about returning to who you are. In my own life, in my own journey, what I realized is my authentic self is so much more in alignment with my childhood self, the little boy that I was before all of the persona, the masks started to enter in, and the power struggles, the identity struggles. But if I think back and I look back on really the beginning of my life, my childhood, the man I am now and the boy I was then are so much closer than what I was in the middle of that journey. And so the afternoon of life presents us opportunities not to achieve or to create or to become, but to remember and to return and to recommit to who we were, to who we are, to who we were always meant to be. That's our authentic self, our true self, our soul. And that's the conversation you'll be a part of if you tune in to the Soul Centered podcast. Thank you. Salam, shalom, namaste. Peace.